Welcome back, everybody, to our podcast channel. And today we have such a great surprise for all of you. We are joined here with me, Ronak Singh Mer, Ridhwan Senapati, Arush Ramachandran, and Sarvas Barara, professional redditor, Bitcoin experts, as well as our professional host, Sarvas Barara. And I know you all are technological nerds who like to watch this stuff. So let's get right into it.
Well, thank you, Ronak. I honestly can't think of saying anything that you haven't already covered. So I think we'll be jumping right into our topic with a talk from Arush.
Before we start talking about technology, there are no Reddit reviewers here. There are only social media influencers. We, people's opinions matter in this meeting. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Uh, I'm going to talk a bit about Web3. It's a very exciting new prospect. It's going to be a great opportunity for people in the next decade. But in order to understand it, let's go back. Let's understand the history of web. So the first phase of web, uh, it's called Web 1, obviously. So in um, that era was governed by consumers. So there were a lot of consumers, a very few creators of content, and the internet was basically used to spread information in the form of boring static pages. So there are millions of scripts that were very hard to access because the cost of internet was very high, internet speeds were very low, and using a computer or using or accessing the internet was not so easy for the common man. So it was a very niche thing at that time, a very few users of internet, and even among those users, a lot of them were consumers and a very few creators. Web 2 completely changed this. Web 2 commercialized the internet, which was previously banned in Web 1. So Web 2 made advertisements possible in the internet, which made the internet more interactive. It was more interactive because things like graphic user interface, uh, programming languages dedicated towards building a better graphic user interface like JavaScript were invented. And with that, a lot of new users came onto the internet.
I
Even
mean, as
today,
much as you can curse Web2 for giving us things like annoying adverts that refuse to leave you, I think it was like a complete revolution in terms of the way the people viewed the internet, right? The people were interacting with this content on there. Because earlier on with Web1, you just had like text based pages, boring long paragraphs that nobody could even be bothered to read, and very few people
right,
were. But then with the
Why are you
introduction of
talking about
languages
Web
like
2 in
this,
past tense? Isn't it still going on right now?
it's still going on, but it's a dying breed. It's the future is very exciting, and we would like to think that Web 3 is going to be our future. But let's get back to Web 2. So Web 2 really brought a revolution in the front end of our systems, of our internet. But no one was paying a lot of attention to the back end. In the back end, all the systems were centralized. All your data, all of it was collected by a small group of people, and they realized that this data held value because a very few people had it. And because of that, they started selling your data to companies and made you the consumer. They made you the product. And people initially they didn't mind this. Even after people got to know about this, they didn't mind it because you were getting a bucket load of information in exchange for your privacy, which didn't seem a big deal a few, say, a decade ago. But now with increasing awareness about the internet, people have realized that their privacy matters, and they
you know,
don't have to they don't have to put it on the line for in lieu of getting information from the internet.
essentially, I
You're
think
saying
that's
something,
the spirit of everything that you see going on around you. We've gone a long, long way since WikiLeaks. We got the
right?
Facebook scandal, we got election manipulation through social media, and I think that's when people really began to realize that our data is something that we should have full access to, and not a centralized corporation that can use it for any purpose it wants. And I think that's the idea
Right.
behind Web3, right? Giving power back to the
Right.
consumer.
Right.
Yeah, I
Giving
mean, we
power
all
back
yearn
to the
for
consumer.
as much freedom as we can get, right? And
Hmm.
like talking about Facebook and stuff, I just remembered something that is connected to this, right? It was about metaverse. Like, how many of you know about this?
Wasn't that just a
Well,
publicity stunt by Mark Zuckerberg to increase the value of Facebook stock?
Well, I
Well,
mean,
well,
looking
I
I
at
can
heard
how
only
of
say,
metaverse
I
when I was reading up about Web3. So Web3, the idea is to make systems decentralized and increase the number of public records in order to sort of decrease the value of the data. So before we understand decentralization, let me give you an example on what centralization is. So let's take an example of your bank. People who are using your bank, who have accounts in your bank, all the people are connected through this one organization. All the transactions, all those receipts, all that data is held by your bank, and you have no knowledge about the other person's data and vice versa. All the information is with the banks, and this is what centralization is. And we have seen in the past how centralization can give too much information to a very few people, and they might use it in not a very constructive manner.
Yeah,
So
essentially, I think that
this
was
is
the
what
spirit of what
decentralization was.
Facebook was doing, right? Essentially, it was
Right.
this huge conglomerate that was, misusing the data of a lot of people who were using its products for free, right? And this idea of metaverse is well, sort of an effort by Mark Zuckerberg to clear up the image of Facebook, in lieu of saying that
Mhm.
now we're connecting users to users. Now we're decentralizing it. Now we're not this big evil corporation anymore, but rather it's you, the user, who has the power to interact with anybody else, and that's the power of making it public domain.
Mhm.
Right.
yes, now I really don't know whether Mark Zuckerberg did it for that reason or it was just a publicity stunt. But reading about that news a few days ago, I got really interested into it and started looking into metaverse. And the concept is like the basic goal of Web3, right? Uh, Metaverse actually, the name metaverse has actually come from a novel, right? A sci-fi novel. So it's such an abstract concept. It simply means meta means beyond, and verse means universe. So it simply means a universe that is beyond this universe, right? So that can just give you an idea of how large an idea this is, right?
Mhm.
And so we have a lot of metaverses right now in this world, right? But they are all partial metaverses. They're not actual metaverses because while you can find a ton of complex definitions for metaverse on the internet, which none of us will understand, the simplest definition is that it's a virtual world that truly is connected to the real world and is a lot like the real world, right? It's bringing virtual world closer to our real world in many aspects. For example, in games like Minecraft or Roblox, yes, you can have social connections, you can talk with other people, but there's always that middleman in the business. And you don't really trust anyone that is on the other side of the screen. That's what we're taught everywhere, right? You don't trust anyone on the internet.
Yeah, I
But
think
the
once again
metaverse
that's
is
the
the
major
next.
problem, because you can hide behind anonymity on by the way that Web2 is set up. And so Web3 and the metaverse, as an example of it, is more about bringing that trust and reliability to internet relationships, to people being really who they say they are, and not just being some fake version of themselves that has no implication in the real world, and thus being allowed to carry out the activities that they want to carry out, even if they may be scamming other people of their money and things like that. And I
And
However,
think
it
I
makes
still
a
do
lot of
think
sense
that
because
anonymity is still
in today's
useful
world, we are
since
spending
there
around
is
10 to 12 hours of our day on the internet. And so, being taking so many precautions is not very practical in today's day and age because of just the amount of time we are spending there. So, why not make the systems more credible?
precisely.
Exactly. And basically, why would you trust a person in real life more than the person on the virtual world? The simple reason is that the person in real life has consequences attached to his actions, right?
Mhm.
But the virtual world does not have them. If someone slaps me out in the streets, I can hold him accountable for it, right? He can go to jail, right? But in the virtual world, it does not really matter unless it's a very severe case. But this is what metaverse has to change, and this is why it is the next step towards social connection, right? Uh, and basically, it brings a lot of stake. It ups the stakes of doing anything on the virtual world, and thus creates a lot of credibility and trust between us. Right? For example, the metaverses, the true metaverses that are here right now, like Decentraland and Sandbox, they are all connected to a crypto wallet which contains some cryptocurrency, and basically it's your actual crypto account. So if you do anything and you try to run away or create a new account, just like real life, you can't just create a real life, new life, because if you do that, you're left with no money, and you can't just have an endless supply of money. You have to use real money to actually do that.
So I think an
So,
interesting
I
point
mean,
in that conversation is the talk about cryptocurrencies and how they work. And well, Ridhiman, you were talking about how you read that one article on Bitcoin last week, and I
no,
think you're really
don't
the
bring him
expert
down
to
like this.
discuss.
He's our cryptocurrency expert.
Absolutely, absolutely, he is, because that's one article more than the rest of us combined.
He hopes to make it
Thank
rich
you for
quickly.
the
He
trust
hopes
that
to
you have
make
shown
millions.
me. And essentially, cryptocurrency is the collection of binary data which is designed to work as a medium of exchange. It is essentially a fiat currency, but it is different from other fiat currencies in that it's not directly convertible to any commodity. For example, you can use dollars to buy gold, but you cannot exactly use Bitcoin to convert it into dollars. You will have to use an other exchange system in order to exchange Bitcoin and get that. So it's indirectly convertible, but not directly convertible, which makes it somewhat insulated to other economic shocks, but only
But
somewhat, because
I've
it is still
actually
affected by what traders are feeling on a particular day, like how the weather is, if there is a war going on, things like that.
I've actually
But
seen people buying stuff for Bitcoin, but you say that it's not really convertible. So like,
yeah,
how
well,
does
as
it
you put it,
happen?
I was
it's
saying
through
that it
other
was not
exchange platforms,
directly
right? It's
convertible.
indirectly convertible. But
Exactly.
having that concept, I think our viewers would love to know a little bit more about how it actually works. And I think interesting conversation to have here is about blockchain. So,
Exactly. Blockchain is essentially a growing list of records called blocks linked by cryptography. Each block contains information about the previous block encrypted in a hash manner. And these all form a chain, hence the name blockchain. And it essentially runs by a peer-to-peer network, and hence, which means that it's a perfect technology for Web3, as Arush was saying. But also is that this makes things public. It makes every transaction public, which makes it more kind of safer to do transaction for consumers. But the bad thing about this is that it provides anonymity to you in exchange for this, which of course is bad, since criminals can of course use this and they don't even need to create a paper trail. It just makes money laundering extremely easy.
well, I believe the blockchain, like any other thing, is a tool, right? It's not inherently good or bad. It's rather the purposes we use it for. And talking about what we use it for, I think I was having a really interesting conversation with you, Arush, about DAOs and how they were functioning. I think that would be an interesting segue into that.
Yeah, before we talk about DAOs, I think Ronak has something interesting about Bitcoins and blockchain technology, sorry, that he would like to
Yeah, I
share.
believe it's relation to the metaverse. Ronak, why don't you lead with
Yeah,
that?
definitely. Every cryptocurrency and wallet you use in the metaverse, right? It's connected to a certain cryptocurrency. For example, the Decentraland is connected to the Ethereum currency, and every cryptocurrency works on a blockchain. So, and blockchain, just as Riman explained, right, is a public source, and that's what adds the trust to the users in the metaverse.
Okay. So DAOs are also the concept of decentralization is consistent through all these things, be it metaverse, be it cryptocurrency,
Crypto, be it
and
DAOs.
be it DAOs. So DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. They are completely opposite to our conventional organizations. They are crowd funded, and they are different in the sense that there is not 1% of people who govern all the decisions that are taken for the whole company. There's not one CEO and 10 board members who decide the future of the company. So during crowdfunding, all the people who invest in DAOs get tokens in return. And the more the number of tokens that you have, higher is your power in that DAO. So even though
So you bring direct
the
accountability to all the stakeholders, sort of like what we were hoping to do with the peer-to-peer networks, right?
Right, right. So even though it's not uniform, still it's better than what we had. People
Absolutely.
get greater say in matters, in future matters of the DAOs. But these DAOs, the present DAOs, have not been very successful. In fact, the biggest DAO today, it's called The DAO. It's a very creative
Very
name.
creative.
So it was also crowdfunded. It was actually it broke all records for crowdfunding ventures. It has a whopping $600 million or $500 million of investments in it. Unfortunately, in 2016, so all the code for DAOs are open source, since everything in DAOs are public records. So the code is also open source. So the users of that DAO found weaknesses in that code, exploited it, and took some $150 million worth of Ethereum, the blockchains that the DAO runs on. They took $150 million of that Ethereum and transferred it to their own account. And to avoid that crisis, the whole Ethereum community decided to hard fork Ethereum. That means they split Ethereum into Ethereum Classic and the Ethereum that we see today. So in Ethereum Classic, that money has been stolen, but in Ethereum, those $150 million worth of Ethereum was restored to that DAO. So it has not been a very successful venture till now. It was, of course, a fault in their systems, but the idea is still very interesting. The idea of decentralizing organizations.
Speaking
After all,
of,
if you even consider our stock markets, they often fail at many times, leading to economic shocks. Yet we still use stock markets as a major backbone of the economy. So I don't think that it's inherently bad.
Right. So even though
speaking
DAOs
of
have
investments,
still got to prove their mettle, but there's still a lot of prospect in the future.
there's a lot of prospects, right?
These
And
organizations.
speaking of investments, be it the stock market or DAOs, I have got some quite the topic here. It's somewhat of the buzzword in the world of digital exchange today. And I can guarantee that despite everybody knowing what it is, nobody has any idea how it actually works.
You're talking about NFTs, right?
We're talking
Non-fungible
about
tokens.
NFTs.
Look,
I was going to
Sarvas,
give
let me
him a
tell you
drum
something,
roll
okay?
because of all that build up.
I've only heard about that word in Logan Paul's blogs, and let me tell you, I don't believe anything he says. I mean, why would you spend so much money buying a picture of a bored monkey? Like, if you're doing that, is the monkey really bored, or are you the one that is bored?
And using expensive things as status symbols. I thought we were done after iPhone, the iPhone generation came and people bought it like crazy just because it was a status symbol. This took it to another level.
Well, there's some truth in what you guys are saying, right? But then again, let's get into the real concept. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's get the basics down first, is what I'm saying. What even is an NFT, right? I mean, the acronym itself stands for non-fungible token, NFT, but that doesn't make anything clear in the slightest, right? So
Right.
the phrase non-fungible comes from the concept of fungibility. Let's say you have a 1 rupee coin and I have a 1 rupee coin. I can give you my coin and I can take yours, and it doesn't make a difference in the amount of money either of us has, right? Similarly, if
One
you have-
Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin.
oh, absolutely. Even in Bitcoin, we can
The
exchange
Bitcoin
it and it
expert
wouldn't
speaks.
make a difference.
E is equal to Bitcoin Square.
Well, we say one Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin.
Well-
Bitcoin can neither be created nor be destroyed. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Let Sarvas continue, please.
All right. Well, as opposed to that, NFTs are non-fungible, right? They're non-exchangeable, and one NFT, unfortunately, is not equal to one NFT, which makes it different from, say, a cryptocurrency, right? A, an NFT is inherently unique. And well, the second part of the phrase is non-fungible token. And a token basically means that every NFT is associated with some piece of media, be it a picture of a bored monkey, a meme of a bored dog, or an audio or video, anything basically. Since every piece of art, like every NFT, is inherently unique. But now on to the
Mhm.
practical part, conducting transactions involving NFTs. But hold on to your crypto wallets just a little longer, guys. Because first of all, what does it even mean to own an NFT, right?
Like, right. You
Owning a
can
picture,
own,
artwork.
Well,
Exactly. You can own an artwork, but what does exactly it mean to own an NFT? Are you like I've been screenshotting things my entire life. Does that make me the owner of an NFT?
no, no. So,
exactly. We have been doing that.
contrary to
How can
popular
something
opinion,
digital have ownership?
contrary to popular opinion, uh, it's not stolen by screenshotting, and at the same time, if you own it, you don't own the copyright for the actual media itself. So before you say those monkey pictures are yours, let's just get this straight. The monkey pictures themselves aren't yours. What's yours is that in the online public domain blockchain ledger, your name is listed as the owner of that NFT, right? And if you think it's absolutely ridiculous to pay astronomical sums of money just to get your name written in an online ledger somewhere, uh, well,
That no one
the good
needs.
news is you're not alone. Many people have criticized the NFT market as being nothing more than an online scam where people pay ridiculous amounts of money to obtain items that have no real value. But what if I told you that there was an actual real world example of the same thing?
The art market, right? I once
Absolutely.
saw an article which talked about a public urinal named a fountain by Marcel Duchamp, which is actually an art piece which has just an urinal with the artist's name on it. And it's one of the best pieces of modern art in the 20th century.
Well, yes, the art market functions pretty much in that same way. People pay inordinate sums of money for something whose value is near arbitrarily defined, right? But
Right.
ultimately, all of this points to a simple fact. Anything, and I repeat, anything has value as long as people believe it has value, right? Now, be that art, be that NFTs, be that crypto, or be it money itself. I mean, to an alien, how can you explain the concept that one piece of paper can be exchanged for food, for clothing, for shelter, and everything in between?
Hmm.
Right? It
Right.
has value because people agree it has value, right? These same arguments that you make against NFTs or crypto may have been made against credit cards or digital wallets. Yes, yet those changes changed the world. Now, whether blockchain will stand the test of time or not, only time will tell. But for now, the one thing that's clear is the virtual world is as bold, as adventurous, and as downright ridiculous as the real world. And it's up to us to explore it.
Max Planck said that science advances one generation at a time.
Well, it's our generation now.
Wow. Wow. That's a great note to end this podcast on. Thank you to all the listeners for tuning in. This is Sarvasu Barara, Ronak Singh Nair, Ridhiman Senapati, and Arush Ramachandran signing off.